Hey, just a quick heads up before we get started with this episode of the podcast. I wanted to let you know about an important announcement that is really time sensitive and only available this week. So if you can hear my voice right now, listen up, make sure you pay attention. We are opening the doors to our Spanish Fluency Club again this week only. So you only have a few days. If you're interested in accelerating your path to Spanish fluency, you want to get comfortable and confident speaking Spanish with native speakers, make sure you go to SpanishConsalsa.com/join. That's SpanishConsalsa.com/join for all of the details on how you can get one-on-one support to get to your goal of speaking Spanish fluently using our approach. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you like what you've been hearing, you're maybe struggling with knowing what to do next to really get to your goal of speaking Spanish fluently, make sure you check out the Spanish Fluency Club. I don't have time to go into all the details right now when to get started with the episode, but I wanted to let you know before time runs out. So make sure you go to SpanishConsalsa.com/join. Okay, now let's get started with the show.
Bienvenidos.
Welcome to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast,
the show for Spanish learners
that love music,
travel, and culture.
Close your grammar textbooks,
shut down the language apps, and open your ears
how Spanish is spoken in the real world.
Let us show you
how to go from beginner
to bilingual.
Here is your host,
certified language coach,
Tamara Marie.
Hola y bienvenidos al episodio 220. Welcome to episode 220 of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. In this episode, we are going to be talking about an issue that many Spanish learners face, and that is forgetting words and feeling nervous when you're having conversations in Spanish. So this episode was actually inspired by a comment from Joanne, who's a member of our Learn Spanish con Salsa Facebook group. So Joanne said, the number one thing holding me back is forgetting words like someone mentioned before. So we were having a conversation and someone else mentioned that they were having trouble forgetting words also. Joanne goes on to say, also, I don't speak enough with adults. I speak in Spanish with kids a lot, but talking to adults is a different ballgame. So Joanne, I know exactly what you mean. Conversations with adults can feel intimidating, especially if you're used to talking to children, because children are usually a lot more forgiving, right? So with adults, you have to use more complex vocabulary. You have to know expressions that you probably wouldn't use with children. So it can be really easy to get stuck or be unsure of what to say next in a conversation. But in this episode, I'm actually going to share some specific strategies that will help you feel more confident and overcome challenges when you're speaking to adults in Spanish. So we're going to go over some tips today, and I know that if you are like Joanne, that maybe you don't have a lot of experience talking to other adults in Spanish, that it can be difficult to know what to say in a conversation and to really develop those skills. So I'm going to go over 5 different tools that you can use if you find yourself getting stuck in conversations, whether you're forgetting the words or you just don't know what to say next. All right, so the first thing that you can do is practice active recall. So this goes with the first issue that Joanne mentioned, which is forgetting words. Now, this happens to everyone, especially when we're trying to speak quickly or we feel like we're under pressure. When we're in the middle of a conversation, we don't have time to go back and check our app or, look up a word in Google Translate. So it can be difficult because you might feel like, ooh, I don't know what to say next. All eyes are on me. Now, one of the best ways to fix this issue is by practicing active recall. Now, here's how you do it. So after you learn a new word in Spanish, I want you to challenge yourself to remember it and use it right away without looking it up. All right. So once you learn a word, again, you're going to try to recall what that word means, but you're not going to refer back to your notes. So this is going to feel very difficult and uncomfortable at first, but that's really the point, right? The more that you challenge yourself, the more that your brain is going to be really looking to figure out what that word is. So let me give you an example. So let's say that you learned the word buscar, which means to look for. All right, so if you say, okay, I just came across buscar, you looked it up, you know what it means. So immediately what you can do is try to practice using it in sentences. Like you could say, tengo que buscar un libro en la biblioteca o en mi oficina. So I have to look for a book in the library or in my office. You can also phrase it as a question. ¿Qué estás buscando? What are you looking for? So again, the key here is just to think of as many examples as you can. You also want to try to make them relevant to your life. So you don't want to just try to come up with a strange example. Try to think of something that you would actually use. A great way to do this is whatever conversation it came up in, like you say, okay, I don't know how to say to look for. I was looking for my keys. So if that's what you were trying to say, then you want to say, okay, tengo que buscar mis llaves. So I have to look for my keys. So try to make it relevant to something that you will actually use in conversation. The key here is to actively engage your brain to retrieve the word. This really does strengthen your memory, and it will help you when you're in a conversation be able to recall the words when you need to. So that is the first tip, practice active recall. The second thing is to schedule deliberate conversation practice. All right, so the next thing that Joanne mentioned was she really speaks a lot with children in Spanish, but she doesn't speak with adults. And it is true that conversations with adults are different than when you're speaking with children, and they can be a little bit more intimidating. So adults tend to use more idiomatic expressions. Depending on the situation, you might use more formal speech. For example, you might find yourself using usted more, or you might be in a business setting that requires you to speak more formally. And you also are going to be exposed to a wider range of vocabulary than you are when you're talking to children. But the good news is that if you actually schedule deliberate practice, you can build your confidence and you can learn how to be more comfortable having conversations with adults. So what do I mean by deliberate practice? Well, the first thing is you want to make sure you are scheduling it. That's the first thing. So you want to set aside time at least once a week to have conversations with adults in Spanish. All right, so some good ways to do this are you could join a language exchange. So you can find native speakers on apps like Tandem or Hello Talk. And I know sometimes I have heard that sometimes people are looking for more than language partners on those apps, but again, use your own discretion. You can also find a Spanish language meetup. There's a website, meetup.com, which I think has been more popular in the past, but there are still several groups that are pretty active. So if you just look for Spanish language meetups in your area, so just put in like your city or your region, then you should be able to find some groups that are hopefully meeting in person. Sometimes Meetup does have online groups, especially during like the pandemic. There were a lot more meetups shifting to online, but I think most people are meeting in person at this point. So you should be able to find some in-person meetups. Another way to practice deliberate conversation, and deliberate just means that you're going in with the idea that you are going to practice speaking Spanish. You are going to stick through it, even if you do forget a word, and you will note some of those things down. I mentioned in our last episode 219, a way to make sure that when you're in a conversation and you forget a word, that you know how to commit it to memory. So go back to episode 219 if you need more tips on that. But the key here is that you are deliberately having conversation practice sessions, which means that you are speaking Spanish, you're speaking the Spanish that you know, and you are really doing this for the purpose of making it a routine so that you get into the habit of having conversations with adults and you will eventually get comfortable doing so. Right. Another great way to do this is to schedule a weekly session with either a tutor or a language coach. This sometimes is better than a language exchange because this is a person who is really skilled in guiding the conversations that you have, and they can really help you plug in any of those holes in your vocabulary. And hopefully, because it's in a learning setting, you won't feel as intimidated by having these conversations because the person is there to help you. And again, this is just a way to get you more comfortable having these conversations before you are really able to speak in a social setting if you're finding that to be a challenge. So finding a way that you, like I said, at least once a week, that you have some deliberate conversation practice in Spanish. So that is your second tip. Now, the third thing, and this is probably not as obvious as something that you could do, but if you find that you're having a lot of anxiety around speaking Spanish, this can be really helpful. So the third tip is to use relaxation techniques to ease your anxiety. So a lot of what keeps us from having these conversations with other adults is because we're afraid that we will be judged or we might feel overwhelmed. And we're probably going to be more worried about making mistakes when we're talking to other adults. So it's really important to pair your language practice with some sort of relaxation techniques that can help you reduce your anxiety. So here are a few ideas for that. And you can either do these before you have a conversation, or you can just make them a part of your regular practice so that you begin to associate the Spanish language with less stress and less anxiety. One thing that's great to do is guided meditation. So if you listen to meditations in Spanish, you can find an app or YouTube channel. You can just look for meditación and you can find some guided meditations. So in Spanish, that's meditación guiada for a guided meditation. There's plenty on YouTube that are completely free. And this not only helps you relax, but it also improves your Spanish listening skills. Because if you're listening to a guided meditation in Spanish, hopefully that will begin to, you'll begin to associate just more calming things with the Spanish language. And also it's a way to boost your vocabulary. So usually with these meditations, people are speaking very, slowly. So there'll be time for you to pick up new vocabulary if you would like to. But even if you don't understand everything that's being said, hopefully it just gets you into a calming mindset in relationship to the Spanish language. Another thing you can try is yoga in Spanish. So again, same thing. There's plenty of free videos out there. You can follow along with the yoga practice in Spanish and you'll learn some movement related vocabulary, but you'll also learn how to stay calm while the Spanish language is present, right? Which is really, really great. So you can find some short yoga practices. Again, meditations, don't have to be very long. You can find something that's maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes long. And again, this will just help you associate Spanish with more calming things. And of course, the last thing in this section would be listening to some relaxing songs. So if there's songs that you really love, find some soothing music in Spanish, or just a song that you really like, something that makes you smile, something that makes you calm down, something that makes you loosen up. And if you listen to that right before you go into a situation where you have to speak Spanish, hopefully you'll feel more comfortable. Maybe if you're singing along, that'll help you practice your pronunciation as well. So you'll feel like you're not just going from speaking English all day, then going into a meetup and having to automatically switch to Spanish. You'll actually have some time there to get your mouth moving in Spanish before you walk into that situation. So these activities can help you create a positive and stress-free association with the Spanish language, which can make it easier for you to engage in conversations when the time comes, so you're not facing that sort of deer in headlights look like, oh my gosh, I have to switch to Spanish and I'm, really, really nervous, right? So these are just some ways that you can help ease your anxiety related to speaking. The fourth thing to do is learn from your mistakes. So no matter how much you prepare, there will still be times when you forget a word or you don't know how to say something. The key is that instead of just freezing up, if you expect that this will happen and you know that it's part of the process, you can frame it as an opportunity to learn. So one way you can do that is if you're having a conversation with someone, you can just be honest and say that you didn't understand. You don't have to go back to English to say that. You can learn how to say it in Spanish. So, for example, instead of just saying, I didn't understand, or estoy aprendiendo español, I'm just learning, or no lo sé, I don't know, right? Instead of just saying that, you can actually engage in the conversation. So you can tell the person, look, I'm sorry I didn't understand you. Can you explain it again? And the way to say that in Spanish is perdón, no entendí. Perdón, no entendí. So I'm sorry, I did not understand. ¿Puedes explicarlo otra vez? ¿Puedes explicarlo otra vez? Can you explain it again? So most people will be happy to help you, and you will walk away from the conversation with either some new vocabulary or some confidence that you know how to navigate these situations. And hopefully the person will explain it to you again And a lot of times they'll recognize that, look, you're not a native Spanish speaker, so they'll try to use different words, so maybe that you understand it a little bit better. They might speak a little bit slower, but it really just depends on who you're talking to. But if you can just explain that, listen, I didn't understand. Or if you just say, ¿cómo? Which is like, come again or say that again. What'd you say? So that's one way that you can say that. So that way they might just think, oh, they didn't hear me. But the idea is that you are learning from these times when you really feel nervous because you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what they just said. No issue with that. Just make sure that you correct it and you say it, or you just ask the person what they're saying so that you don't say something wrong. Now, if you make a mistake, don't worry about it, right? Make a note of it. You'll probably make a mental note of it. If you catch it right away, just say it a different way. Maybe you don't know a word, or maybe you said something wrong. It's okay. Make a joke out of it. I do it all the time, even now. So try to just take it lightly, and and ask for help. Say, ¿cómo digo eso? Like, how do I say that? Because this is going to be the way that you turn mistakes into learning opportunities. You have to see it as that instead of looking at it as a judgment on your ability to speak Spanish. Take every mistake as an opportunity to learn. And the last tip that I have, if you really want to stop forgetting words in Spanish and be prepared to have conversations about adult topics, well, not that adult, you know what I mean, not conversations about school or with children, actually practice using Spanish in everyday situations. So one of the easiest ways that you can build your confidence is to practice real life scenarios with the Spanish language. And so let me give you a couple of ideas. There's some practical things that you can try. These are things that you probably already do. So the key is, how do we make Spanish a part of your day-to-day life without making this separate sort of learning activity that you're doing in a bubble or in a classroom or with a tutor, and it's very academic and separate from your life? How do we integrate Spanish into your daily life? And this is really important because these are the things that you do every day. So you're going to be more likely to want to talk about these things when you're in a conversation. So one thing that you can do is to write your grocery list in Spanish. This can also have the added benefit of helping you budget or stay on task when you're in the grocery store. Maybe it's just me that has that issue. But before your next trip to the store, write down all the items that you need in Spanish. So as you shop, I want you can also look at your list. You can try to say the words out loud to yourself. Or as you're writing your list, you can say the words out loud so that you practice your pronunciation. You can make flashcards with them if you'd like to as well. But you'll probably find some holes in your vocabulary. Like, for example, let's say you're going to buy apples. You might write manzanas. Like, okay, I know how to say apples. But let's say you want to buy some rice and you're like, oh, arroz. But how about brown rice or wild rice? Or organic brown rice, right? So you can learn a lot of new vocabulary just with the things you do every day, because now you're going to have to look up, okay, well, I know how to say rice, but how do I say brown rice? And don't assume that it's the color brown, because some things are not said the same way in Spanish. So you'll be learning that as you're doing this. So for example, you would write, I'll actually, you know what? I'm going to leave that for you to look up. How do you say brown rice in Spanish? And this is also another tool, because the more that you're exposed to things you don't know, it leaves an open loop or question in your mind. So instead of me just giving you the answer, if you like brown rice or wild rice, or another variety of rice, maybe low carb rice, how do you say that in Spanish? Pick one and look it up, and actually let me know. I want to know if you actually looked this up. You can email me, host@learnspanishconsalsa.com, or you can message us on Instagram @learnspanishconsalsa. That way I'll know for sure that you're paying attention. So how do you say brown rice in Spanish? So you can also, you'll be writing down things like, let's say you get orange juice, jugo de naranja. Right? So you're going to write out every single thing you're going to get in as much detail as possible. If you're a beginner, keep it simple, but if you're more intermediate, challenge yourself. Maybe you're going to a store and you're getting something other than just groceries. Well, how do you say that? I need to get an extra light bulb. I need to get a part for my lawnmower. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's going to be something that comes up in your life. Make a list, make it in Spanish, and refer to those words, because guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a conversation. Let's say you've committed, if you're following this advice, you've committed to practicing Spanish at least once a week. So something that you can talk about, some of these mundane things that we do day to day, you can say, oh, fui al supermercado. I went to the store. I went al supermercado. I went to the grocery store. And then you can say, y compré, and I bought. And you can start to list the things that you bought from your grocery list, okay? So this is a great way to make practicing Spanish a part of your daily life so you can actually express things that you do day to day. Another thing that you can do is translate English phrases that you use pretty commonly. So I want you to think about the words and phrases that you use most often when you're in conversations in English. So it might be basic things like, how was your weekend? Or maybe there's something specific that you do or something specific that you say. Maybe you have certain phrases that you use that are more part of your personality, and you want to know how to say those in Spanish. Write those things down and look them up. And it's also great to, again, if you have dedicated time with a Spanish language coach or a tutor, it's someone that you can ask, like, how would I say this in Spanish? How can I say it so that I sound more natural? And because sometimes people will say, oh, yeah, that's right, I understood it. And you say, okay, well, how can I make that better? How can I sound more natural? Or how would you say it? Those are types of questions you can ask a language partner so that you can actually get the way that it's said in Spanish by a native speaker. So, if so, for example, let's say if you're always talking to your coworkers or your friends on Monday and you ask, how was your weekend? You can learn how to say that in Spanish. So, for example, ¿Cómo estuvo tu fin de semana? ¿Cómo estuvo tu fin de semana? So that's how was your weekend. So you can write that down. You can make a flashcard out of it again. This is something that you can practice because this is something that you'll probably say more likely when you're having conversations with adults versus things that are more academic or again, if you're having conversations in a school setting or with children, these are things that may not come up. So you want to think about those things that you say in normal conversation. All right, so let's recap the 5 tips so that you can stop forgetting words in Spanish and prepare for your conversations with adults. Number 1, practice active recall. Challenge yourself to remember and use new words without looking them up. 2, schedule deliberate conversation practice. So you want to set aside regular time to speak Spanish with adults and find some daily prompts to do so that way you are prepared for your conversations. And again, it's best that you schedule these. There's something on your calendar, ideally same time every week, same group, same people, so that it's definitely something that you'll get in. Number 3, use relaxation techniques in Spanish. You can pair your language learning with activities like yoga, meditation, or music in Spanish to help you reduce your anxiety. Number 4, learn from mistakes. Learn to embrace your mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow and not judgments on your progress towards fluency. And number 5, practice using Spanish in everyday situations. Write down grocery and shopping lists in Spanish and translate common phrases that you use in English so you can build your fluency and confidence. So I hope that Joanne, you found these helpful, and everyone else listening, because, speaking Spanish is a skill. And the more you practice, the better you'll get. So the real key is being consistent and enjoying the process, because if you're constantly feeling uptight and not relaxed, it's not going to be something that you want to do. So we want to find ways to make this an easier process for you and to make it something that you get comfortable doing. And if you follow these 5 tips, I'm pretty sure that before you know it, you will find yourself surprising yourself at how much Spanish you remember. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. If you found these tips helpful and you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the podcast. Share it with a friend that's learning Spanish if you know someone who's also a Spanish learner like you. And leave a review. Reviews really do help us not only get feedback on how we're doing, but also it helps other people find the podcast and find out what you think is valuable. So go to our show notes page, learnspanishconsalsa.com/220 for episode 220 of the podcast. If you'd like to leave a review or give us any other feedback, request for an episode topic for next time, we definitely love hearing from all of our listeners. And as always, I hope something that you heard today will take you one step closer from Spanish beginner to bilingual. Hasta la próxima.
Thank you for listening to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast at learnspanishconsalsa.com.